Story 1. I stopped into my local grocery store on the way home from work to grab some ingredients for dinner. I do administrative work at an industrial facility, so my standard business attire is usually a polo shirt, a pair of denim jeans, and my work boots. The look is passable at a meeting, but since I walk several miles a day, the bottom half of my outfit is built more for utility and endurance than appearance. As I rounded the corner of the store's aisle, I noticed a couple walking arm in arm in front of me. They were looking around and laughing at the peculiarities of the store as if this was the first time they had ever been inside. Admittedly, one of my favorite hobbies is people watching, so to see new faces in one of my regular haunts who seemed so noticeably out of place was an unexpected delight. I couldn't help but slow my normally quick walking pace to allow them to stay in front of me. As their laughter and conversation continued, one of them suddenly turned around mid-stride. She saw me about half a dozen paces behind them with no groceries in my hand and a big smile on my face. When we made eye contact, I smiled a little wider in acknowledgement, which seemed to be all the invitation she needed to ask the classic question. "Hi, do you work here?" I laughed, partly because the moment reminded me of some humorous stories I had read online. I spend too much time on the internet, I'll admit that, and no, I don't intend to change it. Moving along. Because my administrative work is also closely tied to customer service, I couldn't help but respond reflexively. I grinned and said, "Nope, but I could play a manager on television. Where are you trying to go?" They erupted in laughter, and I couldn't help but join them. Their humor about the situation was infectious, and at that point, I was more than happy to be a willing participant on their little adventure. "The deli. Where is the deli here?" one of them asked eagerly. Fortunately, we were already traveling in the direction of the section they needed to find. I pointed ahead of us and gave some simple landmarks as I replied, "Oh, you're almost there. See that red sign? Make a right at the sign, and you're all set." They responded in unison with a cheerful, "Thank you," before taking off in front of me once again. I let them lead the way, partly because I wanted to make sure they actually found it, and partly because, truth be told, I enjoy people watching. It's a guilty pleasure of mine, don't judge me for it. After they passed the last available turn that could have led them off track, I walked by them and, in a half-joking tone, asked, "Hey, are you following me?" That remark was met with yet another round of laughter as I wished them well and disappeared down an aisle to grab my dinner ingredients. As I moved out of earshot, I could hear them still laughing, repeating, "He said he could play one on television. Did you hear that?" Their joy carried through the aisle, and it left me smiling as I continued shopping. Dinner that night was decent, but the unexpected interaction with those friendly strangers made it feel far more enjoyable. Good people are out there. You're one of them. Story 2. This happened in the late 90s when I was 9 years old. To give a bit of context so this makes sense, when I was younger my mother rescued and rehomed animals as well as breeding for profit. We weren't like a puppy mill. Most were purebred cats, dogs, and horses which had homes lined up before conception. One of the dogs we rescued, when I was about 7 or 8, was a pregnant Great Dane cross bullmastiff who delivered about 5 puppies not long after we rescued her. What we didn't expect was parvo, a highly contagious virus that infects dogs and has a very high mortality rate. I can't remember if the mother had parvo or if the puppies caught it after they were born, but out of all the puppies, only one survived, a boy that we named Tiger. Anyone familiar with the temperament of a Great Dane will understand what sort of dog Tiger was. To call him a gentle giant is an understatement. He had the height of a Great Dane, standing at 28 inches tall, with the shoulders, girth, and weight of a bullmastiff, well over 100 pounds, with dark brown stripes all over him. To be totally honest, he looked terrifying, but would sooner lick you to death than he would growl or even bark at you. Not that I ever heard him bark or growl at anyone. I was 9 when we moved to the town that this took place in. A small town with a church on every corner and a population of 2,000 narrow-minded people. We were a family of 4, me, my younger sister, older brother, and our mother, with our entourage of animals, 8 dogs, 2 cats, 3 horses, and a few chickens, which soon grew into a small zoo, and a family or atheists moving to a very churchy town. Needless to say, we didn't fit in and stood out like a sore thumb. Now we have that out of the way, on with the story. A few days after moving there, I decided to take Tiger for a walk and have a look around the town. Tiger could be walked without a lead, but as this was a new environment for the both of us, it was safer to put him on a lead. We lived just out of town along a highway, think Pet Cemetery and the cat, so it was about a 10-minute walk to town, and after a 5-minute walk up a hill, there's a turnoff to a long stretch of road that leads into town. I was halfway down the road when I heard someone shout, "Hey, you, what do you think you're doing with that dog?" There were only 4 or 5 houses along that road with no traffic, so there was nobody else this person could have been yelling at. I looked around and saw a woman out the front of her house walking towards me. Let's call her Karen. This isn't word for word, but a summary of how our interaction went. "Karen, you deaf?" I said. "What do you think you're doing with that dog?" "Me, walking him. He's dangerous. You better keep that mutt away from me and my family if you know what's good for ya." I said okay and continued walking. She muttered something as I walked away, but I have no clue what it was. I didn't see her on my walk back home, but we crossed paths about a week later. Only this time, she was in her car and Tiger wasn't on a lead. I took the same path as the week before, only this time I was closer to town than our first encounter. I heard a car coming up behind me, so I went to the side and told Tiger to follow. We were walking on the side of the road as Karen came up beside us, rolled down her window and said, "Put that dirty mutt on a lead right now, or I'm calling the police. He's fine to be off leash, and he's not dangerous. I promise, he's very well behaved." In my state and the area this happened in, it's legal to have a dog off leash if the dog is well behaved and under control by the owner. He's not fine. He's scaring my kids. She was the only person in the car, and I'd never seen her kids. Me, trying to calm her down and reassure her that he's a good dog. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but he's a good dog. Look. Tiger, sit. Good boy. Stay." I did this in front of Karen and walked away while Tiger sat in the same spot until I called for him to follow. But do you think this helped to settle the wild Karen? Of course not. "Karen, you better get that dog put down before he kills someone. He's scaring my children." "Your kids aren't even in your car, lady. I'm sorry, but I have to go." I continued walking to town in the hope that Karen would leave me alone, but the lunatic followed along beside us for most of the way to town until I somehow managed to lose her by turning into a small side street. I didn't have a mobile phone, so I stopped at a shop to use their phone to call my mom to come get me. The only way home was the road that her house was on, and I certainly didn't want another encounter with her again. I wish I could say that this was the only bad encounter I had with her and other entitled people in that town, but it's not. I have many more I'll post if you're interested in reading them. One involves a horse and a tractor. Story 3. I work as a cashier supervisor in a major pharmaceutical mall of Canada, and I've been working there for more than 1.5 years. It's pretty common for me to get racist comments from people, mostly shoplifters, because I have brown skin, but I don't mind it at all. And I'm just 19 years old, so some people don't even take me seriously sometimes. Fast forward to yesterday evening around 5 p.m. So apparently I had a day off, but I live pretty close to my workplace, 4 minutes of walk, so it doesn't take long to go there. For the note, it was 1 degree Celsius this evening, which is very lovely weather in my city because it goes down to minus 50 degrees Celsius in harsh winter every year. So I thought I should have a walk, and as I got to my workplace, I remembered to buy some chips and some snacks. So I went and casually talked to pretty much everyone and left after paying at pharmacy till which is at the back of mall. I didn't take any plastic bags because I didn't had to walk much. So I left the store from the front door and started walking to my home. Suddenly I hear tire screeches, and an SUV pulled in front of me so close that could have hurt me really bad, so I got scared and jumped a little. And then came out Karen, a typical Karen, and she started talking to me. "Hey, stop." Me, in customer service voice by force of habit. "How can I help you, ma'am?" "You need to pay for those stuff you have in your hand. You're not in your country, so don't steal." "But ma'am, I paid for my stuff." "Show me your receipt." My mistake here was that I didn't take a paper receipt. Instead, I emailed that to me. Me, realizing she's being racist. "Do you work here? If not, I don't need to show you the receipt." I said that knowing that she doesn't actually work there. "I do work here, now show me your receipt." "Where is your uniform?" "I am an undercover security guard to stop people like you who like to steal in other people's countries." "Oh, then call the manager. I want to talk to your manager right now for your reckless driving." "You talk to me because I am the one in charge right now." I ignored her and started walking away because I didn't want to make it a big scene. "Stop. Security. Security. Stop him. He is stealing." Everyone in the parking lot was looking at me. Me, in a sarcastic voice. "Wait, I thought you're undercover security though." The security guards approach me and ask what happened because they know that I am a supervisor in the same mall. "Nothing, but I didn't know that Mr. Smith, the mall owner, hired new undercover security." Before the security guards could say something, Karen said, "I am working here for the last 6 months, and you are not allowed in here anymore." I took my phone out and called Mr. Smith. "Hey boss, I won't be able to work tomorrow." "What happened? Is everything all right?" "Mr. Smith and I have a pretty close personal relationship outside work too." "Yeah, but I guess I am just not allowed in the store anymore." What?" "Yeah, the new undercover security guard just told me that I am stealing some stuff, and I am not allowed in the store from now on." Karen, now realizing that I work there. "No, you don't work here. I've never seen you here. You are lying." "I am on the way." "Why don't you arrest him?" Karen asked the guards. "If you don't know the law, Canada does not allow any kind of citizen arrest unless there is assault or battery." I answer her myself. "Ma'am, this person works here as supervisor for the last year and 6 months." One of the guards told her. "You are lying. I've never seen this person here." "I didn't have problems with you asking for my receipt until you mentioned in your country," I was telling her, but then got interrupted by Mr. Smith when he arrived. "What is going on?" I proceed to tell him everything. "Lady, you are being racist to my employee, and I will not tolerate this at all. I know you take all your medications from here, but from this point you are not allowed in this store. And if you get on private premises of this store, I will get you arrested for trespassing on private property." But I was just asking for his receipt because I thought he was stealing. "I wouldn't have any problems if you would have asked for a receipt. But you were being racist to him, and I will not tolerate this at any point." After this, Mr. Smith called her doctor and told the doctor to send her prescription to another pharmacy due to her ban in this pharmacy. Karen was left cussing us all with a red face that I thought would explode at any point of time. I would have shown her the receipt, but I lost my mind when she told me that people like me steal in her country. Story 4. I'm back with a new story about an entitled person, or, in this case, entitled people. This may end up being used in a video if it is kept as deliberately vague on locations and names as I have written it. Obligatory disclaimer: my sentence structure and punctuation are not the best, so if you must roast me for it, please use all appropriate spices. For the record, I am not on a mobile device while writing this, and this incident happened just a few hours ago. I wanted to share it before the details faded from memory. I recently came into possession of a 1947 International pickup truck, a true monster of a 4-wheel drive. It looks fantastic now that I've cleaned it up and changed the fluids. Even better, it still has the original Black Diamond inline 6-cylinder engine, which is pretty remarkable for a barn find. It's a gorgeous old truck, and, as I have discovered, very desirable. Now that it's legal and roadworthy, I've begun driving it regularly. Often, people wave at me, honk their horns, or even ask me to pull over so they can get a closer look. I constantly receive offers to buy it, but it is not for sale, nor will it ever be. This truck has quickly become my most treasured possession, and I plan to show it off at different truck rallies and gatherings. This particular incident took place at a local gas station and convenience store. The day had started off pretty normally. I had already grown used to the honks and stares, nothing unusual when you own a vehicle that stands out. I pulled into the station to get gas and a snack, since I hadn't eaten breakfast yet. I went inside, bought a breakfast burrito, and paid for my gas. But when I stepped outside and walked back to my truck, I was stunned to see a teenager sitting behind the wheel, as though he was about to drive off. I shouted before I even reached the truck, telling the kid to get out because it wasn't his. When I got closer, he still hadn't moved. Instead, he said, "This truck is so cool, do you want to sell it?" I replied firmly, "It's not for sale, kid. Now get out before I pull you out of it." The teenager shot back, "But everything is for sale, and I want it." "You're not getting it. It isn't for sale," I repeated, opening the door. At that, the kid suddenly bolted and ran off. I muttered to myself about kids these days, thinking the matter was over. But I was wrong. I had just finished filling the tank and went back inside to get my change. This time, I made sure to lock the doors before stepping away. When I returned, I saw the same kid again, only now he was standing next to an adult who I assumed was his father. The man looked straight at me and said, "My son wants this truck. Hand it over now." I kept calm but firm. "That's not going to happen. If you don't back away from the truck, I'll be calling the sheriff right now, and I'll make sure you regret not backing off." The man puffed up his chest and said, "You're giving us that truck, or we're taking it." At that point, I simply pulled out my cell phone and started dialing the non-emergency number. As soon as the man realized I wasn't bluffing, his face went pale. He quickly backtracked, saying, "Hey now, I was just kidding. Do you want to sell it?" I pointed at the teenager and replied, "I already told him it's not for sale and never will be. Now I suggest you leave before the sheriff arrives." Without another word, they hurried off. But that wasn't the end of it. When the sheriff finally arrived, I described the incident in detail. They checked the security cameras outside the store, but unfortunately, there wasn't much they could do without directly witnessing the confrontation or having any bystanders willing to speak up. So, I went on with my day. I did some shopping at the local big box store, stopped at a specialty parts shop that focuses on classic and antique vehicles to order parts for my truck, and then headed home. For a few hours, everything seemed fine. I parked the truck in my secured garage, as I usually do. I prefer keeping it inside to protect it from the weather, and considering what had happened earlier, it turned out to be the right call. Because, as I found out later, those two were not finished trying to get my truck. Late that evening, just as I was about to get into bed, I heard strange noises coming from the garage. I looked out and saw two figures prowling around, at first trying a security window, then tugging at the garage doors as if attempting to force them open. I quickly slipped out the back door with my shotgun in hand. The rounds were loaded with rock salt and pork rinds, painful, but not deadly unless fired at very close range. I make my own shotgun and rifle rounds, so I know exactly what they can do. For context, when rock salt is forced into the skin, it produces an intense burning sensation. Pork rinds, on the other hand, stick to flesh like super glue and have to be peeled away with the right solvents. Both cause extreme discomfort but are not lethal. The next sound those two heard was the unmistakable ka-chunk of a shotgun round being chambered. They froze instantly. I spoke in a quiet but firm voice. "On the ground. Now, both of you." They dropped to the ground quickly, lying face down with their hands behind their heads, and that is exactly how they stayed until the sheriff arrived. When the sheriff pulled up, I carefully set my shotgun aside as requested and allowed them to place me in cuffs temporarily until the situation was sorted. The deputies pulled the two off the ground none too gently and escorted them over to their cruiser. They questioned me, removed the cuffs once they confirmed I was the property owner and temporarily took possession of my shotgun while they sorted everything out. The officers then questioned the two intruders separately. I explained what happened and emphasized that I believed they were targeting my antique truck. I also told them about the incident earlier in the day at the gas station involving the same father and son. Their excuse? They actually claimed that I had stolen their old truck, that I had hidden it inside my garage, and they were just trying to take back what was theirs. When asked for proof, I gladly produced the title and registration, then invited the sheriff to step inside my garage to run the plates. Everything checked out. It was registered to me and me alone. I couldn't help but smile as the two were loaded into the back of the cruiser. I even gave them a cheerful little wave goodbye as they were driven off to jail. Their court date is still pending at this point, and I'll share updates if I'm able. I later got my shotgun back after proving ownership and signing it out from the department. That was no big deal. As for the entitled father and his son, they remain in jail facing several charges: trespassing, attempted theft, attempted auto theft, and a few others. Story 5. I've talked about this a fair amount, but my previous job was as a sous chef for a well-known place on the Lower East Side of New York City. This is the sort of place that would charge hundreds of dollars for bottle service. It was primarily a nightclub, but they also had a somewhat competent kitchen. On more than one occasion, they would host a party and forget to black out how much they were charging before giving the kitchen the information. Oh, we're cooking hors d'oeuvres for 100 people on floor 1 for 2 hours. Wait, they're charging these folks $20,000? The point being, they made an incredible amount of money. I was hired at a $58,000 per year salary, which was the most money I had ever made after spending the last decade of my life working in various New York City restaurants in pretty much every position you could think of. Prep cook, bartender, busser, general manager, you name it. The only jobs I hadn't done so far were executive chef and front-of-house floor manager. When I was applying for a different job, I was offered this position at a location other than the one I had shown up for, and I decided I would be foolish not to take it. Well, it was billed as mostly days and 5 days a week. I figured I would be working around 45 hours a week since my salary was the minimum unpaid overtime salary in New York City. There were no benefits involved, which is unsurprising in the industry. What it turned into, less than a month into my being there, was Tuesday through Sunday and 55 to 60 plus hours per week. In the 7 months I was there, I saw the chef cook maybe 3 meals that weren't for management staff meals, and one of those was scrambled eggs. He had me taste them, and they were so unpleasantly salty that I made a face. For all his talk about clipboard chefs, he was a prime example of one. He also worked 6 days a week most weeks, but one of those days was literally just showing up for manager meetings. Now, I know what you're thinking, but let me tell you, I have done his job. I've done food costing, I've done ordering, I've done payroll, and I've done all of the things you would expect a chef to do outside of cooking. This man spent half of the summer in the nice, air-conditioned office. We got along fine at first, and it seemed like he knew his stuff. Come to find out, it was all theoretical. The guy had only taken an online culinary course. I honestly have no idea how he reached the position he was in. As time went on, I took on more and more responsibility. His relationship with several staff members deteriorated significantly while I was there. I was not good at playing both sides, and so I didn't get along particularly well with management, even though much of the staff viewed me as part of them, and therefore the enemy. That said, I put a lot of time into streamlining things, and nearly everything I proposed to make things simpler for the prep and line cooks became the standard operating procedure. Long story short, I was excelling at my role. I was also destroying my back. We're talking 2 or 3 14-hour shifts in a row every week from Friday to Sunday, open to close. There was lots of heavy lifting from putting away deliveries. Half the time, I didn't even have time to run around the corner for a smoke and a coffee. On Saturdays, the entire team usually had about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to relax between brunch and dinner service. I was lucky to get a full half an hour, and often I would forego that break to make sure everything was ready for dinner service. Meanwhile, this chef was criticizing me for things not being done in a timely manner when we were a man down on the prep team, and he was just sitting in the office. I am 6'3", and at the time I weighed 190 pounds soaking wet, just because I didn't have time to eat on Fridays and Saturdays since that time was spent cooking staff meals. At least I looked fit for a while. In my 6th month, November 2019, we were about to roll out a new menu. This had been in the works since at least September, but I had seen none of the new food and had no idea what was being planned. I found out the chef was going on vacation for a week and a half and would be gone for 2 weekends in a row. Literally 2 days before he left, the new menu dropped. I don't remember exactly how many dishes I had to learn from prep to finished, table-ready product, but I think it was between 8 and 12 between the two menus. As a side note, I had requested one night off to see my favorite band live in Brooklyn a few months prior, and he told me, "That's probably not going to work. I usually go out of state to see my grandfather around then." Long story short, it was absolutely the most stressful situation I had ever been in during my life. By all accounts, I handled it well. I ran the show as best as I could while he was away, and the problems we had were extremely minor. As soon as he came back, I realized the dynamic had changed. Now, he viewed me as a threat. He became increasingly critical of every single thing I did. He started being outright rude to my face. I had been trying to get health insurance through work, but they kept giving me the runaround. One time they literally just printed some 20 pages of medications covered by one of the plans offered, and when I pointed this out, they said they would get me the proper information later. That never happened, obviously. Less than a week after his return, we got hit by the health department. Of course, as had been the case since I was hired, the walk-in refrigerator was not nearly cold enough. We probably threw out thousands of dollars worth of food, and there was no doubt a huge fine on top of that. I don't even want to think about the wasted labor cost. During the inspection, the chef turned to me and asked, "How could this happen?" I said, "I know, terrible timing as usual," and he said, "No, I mean, why didn't you tell me there was something wrong with the walk-in?" I had been telling him about this issue multiple times per week every month. He was fully aware of the problem. I even had text messages from while he was on vacation the previous week where he asked me for an update, and I straight up told him, "We need a technician to fix this now." At this point, I was just about done. I kept asking when the 5-day week would come, and the answer was always soon. I kept asking about health insurance, and it was always, "We're working on it." I had told the chef no fewer than 10 times in those 7 months that I couldn't keep going at this pace because of my bipolar condition. On top of that, I had a health issue called dystonia from a medication I used to take, which is sometimes triggered by stress. I would stutter, shake, and have involuntary muscle jerks. Not great when half of your job involves using a knife. It got to the point where it was happening multiple times per week. After one of these episodes on a Sunday, I collected myself and got back to work. He walked into the kitchen and started going on about how the quality of my work was subpar for his kitchen, as if he would even know at this point. I told him, "If you're not happy with my performance, I can put in my notice." His response was, "Spare me the drama." I put in my 2 weeks' notice the following Tuesday morning while doing prep, and was immediately sent an email response saying, "That's fine, you don't have to come in." I told my coworkers, "If I'm not getting paid, I'm not sticking around. I only put in notice so you guys wouldn't get stuck all at once." I said my goodbyes and went on my way. At first, I was just relieved. I had been ready to move on from this industry for years by now. I decided to take some time off from work and just relax. I filed for unemployment, appealed the decision, and was granted those benefits. I've got to say, that was nice at first. As time went on, though, I just got angrier and angrier about the absolute nonsense I had dealt with, only to come out the other side with no reference, and nothing to show for all the damage I had done to my mind and body. Well, on top of that issue with the walk-in that I mentioned, this place was a mess. We had a serious rodent problem. One even died in the ceiling, and they just sort of added a layer. I don't know what actually happened there, but there was a doorway near the kitchen that smelled like rotting death for a month. There was also a back prep area that didn't have proper ventilation. The walk-in refrigerator in that area was only in order when I took care of it myself once in the middle of the week, and again on Sunday after brunch. I couldn't even guess how many violations existed back there just from the rodents and the improperly stored and dirty pans and storage containers. But that's not even the wildest part. They had a fake door covering the back prep area. No joke, it was literally a piece of wall on wheels stored in dry storage. When the health department showed up, we were supposed to slide it over so they wouldn't see the second walk-in or the prep area. Absolutely ridiculous. I had never seen anything like it in my life, and I still have no idea what they were thinking. So, after stewing for about a month, I finally decided, forget it, and I called the health department. The woman I spoke to said, "I'm not even sure how to report this. I've never heard of anything like this before." They had no doubt already paid thousands of dollars for the issues from the prior inspection. And since the health department comes back within the month if you don't accept your grade, they almost certainly thought they were in the clear. I can only imagine the chaos of yet another inspection when they thought they had 6 months to get things in order. Last I heard, that chef had been let go and his name was no longer on their menu. There were multiple public reviews talking about the health department shutting them down and causing terrible service about 2 weeks after I called. Then the pandemic hit. Somehow, they're still open, but at least their pockets are a little lighter for my trouble. And for what it's worth, that band I went to see, they were absolutely amazing live. Story 6. A year ago, we got a rescue dog. She is about 2 years old now. She doesn't like visitors inside our house, and she really doesn't like women over 60 for some reason. We've worked with her to get better at visitors in the home and hired a trainer to help. We moved my elderly mom into our house in January, and it took a good 5 or 6 sessions for the dog to be okay with her. Now they are fast friends. One evening when my mother and father-in-law were over, the dog lunged at my mother-in-law and growled snapped. She did not bite. Since then, my mother-in-law has lobbied us to get rid of the dog, largely egged on by her husband. We bought a crate and crate the dog any time they are over. We hired a trainer so the dog could get better with visitors. My mother-in-law has done 2 training sessions, about a month apart. She gets frightened each time as the dog growls and lunges, but does not bite. The dog has shown improvement each time. We trust the dog. We have 2 kids, and they love the dog and play all the time. Considering what a small kid can do to a dog, if she was ever going to bite, she would have done that already. My mother-in-law has told us we need to get rid of the dog or she and her husband might have to move back to the state they moved from when the youngest was born. I've told my wife that I feel this is more about father-in-law being unhappy with a move here in the first place and using this as a manipulation wedge issue than anything else. My mother-in-law says she feels unwelcome in our house. We have told her if she wants to stop in and say hi. They live 4 blocks away. Just text us and we'll crate her. We've offered to do more training, but get the response that it's clearly not working, so why continue? She used to be able to just walk in our house, and now she can't. We didn't like her just walking in our house, but she would do it anyway. To me, the fact that a grandma would prefer to emotionally hurt her grandchildren rather than work on training is mind-boggling. We have evidence, my mom, that it can work, though my mom has always had dogs and the mother-in-law has not. When my wife and I talked, my position was that the dog is now part of our family. We shouldn't be role models for when the going gets tough you just quit. We don't give in to emotional blackmail and hurt our kids just to make mother and father-in-law happy. They don't need free access to our home, and that our offer to crate the dog is reasonable. Our offer to pay for training is reasonable. Jettisoning the dog to make mother-in-law happy is unreasonable. She would say she's worried the dog will attack the kids. But in a year we've seen no evidence of that, and the dog has come so far. The counterposition is that the dog is just a dog. And is it worth ruining a parental relationship over a dog?